Tisztelt kollégák!
At first I thought that a rather boring presentation should be compiled and many people will fall asleep, but then after first speeches I can say that we are looking forward to a very interesting debate. I have to say that I am not against mining. And this is also shown by the fact that we were dancing together in the disco with the mining section. However, I have spent a lot of time in the Paks nuclear power plant, and later I worked at the Oroszlány power plant, which is fueled by coal. There were a few points presented to which I would like to also react. Winston Churchill once said that any statistic that I lie about is true. Sorry for saying this, but obviously if I compile a system of arguments, I will look for the parameters that verify or justify my statements. It is true that this data presented here was all justifiable, were all justifiable. I would like to start with the fact that the heating units for nuclear power plants are difficult to import. Australia, South Africa, Canada, these countries are the greatest producers. Countries that are more or less stable, especially Australia and Canada, and it is not too difficult to import uranium ore from these countries. Hungary also has fission material. Whitehorse has launched reopening, and at this moment there's a feasibility study conducted in Pécs. We find that this uranium ore is exploitable, but if we would like to compare it to the market price, world market price, then it wouldn't be too feasible. And it is something it is an over-exaggeration to say that it is difficult to buy fission material. Another interesting issue is whether or not the question of how used heating units should be stored is difficult. Of course, there is no perfect solution. In Sweden and Finland we can see leading technology, because in '92 they launched a program and they implement this program. By 2020 they can store these heating units. But of course there's a very important question. Used nuclear heating units have a 7,420 uranium content, megawatt uranium content. And through reprocessation, this can be reused, reutilized, and this nuclear technology enables us to reuse the heating unit, which has been taken out of the power plant. It is the radioactive waste that the public is interested in. Interestingly, this technology is also able to deal with isotopes that are highly contagious by way of transmission, and can transform these isotopes into those which have a much lower halving time. Of course, it's not a perfect solution, but this technology is being developed by the minute. We heard that the electricity production based on coal is the cheapest. Obviously, there are countries where this is true, but in Hungary, this is not the case. For the electricity produced in the nuclear power plant is the cheapest. But there are questions that have not been dealt with yet. If you look into the budget, you can see that the Paks nuclear power plant must pay more than 20 billion forints into the central nuclear budget or fund in order to finance the deconstruction and the disarmament of the power plant. And when I was working there, this program was compiled until 2018, and the monies to be paid into the fund were calculated in order to finance the costs of disarmament by 2118. There will be further questions maybe, and then we will have a nice professional debate on these issues. I would like to excuse myself from those with English native language because I have two journals, two papers in my hand, and in the Hungarian version I should be speaking of the construction of nuclear power plants, and based on the English one I would be talking about something else, but I was actually preparing for the Hungarian version, although the program has changed since, so I beg your pardon. I will try to speak very briefly about the regional situation. And I would like to say that I have been nominated as CEO of the Paks nuclear power plant. It is very important, and I would not like to return to the question why nuclear power plants are constructed, but in this case, we do not have to talk about an extension, but of a maintenance of the capacity that we already have. The life cycle of a nuclear power plant can be extended until 2037 in case the Hungarian authorities authorize that. Between 2025 and 2030, the Hungarian energy strategy wants to launch the new reactors, and after a few years of working together, the new units shall proceed in operation and the old reactors will be shut down. What are the most important issues of constructing a new block? Well, the first question is nuclear security, especially after Fukushima. And the security level that we have set ourselves, the 3+ generation reactors are totally adequate to reach these ambitious goals. Reactors have a security indicator, a zone melting indicator, which shows us what the probability is to have a sort of zone harm in 1 year. A zone injury. So these reactors have to work for 1 million years to have the possibility of a zone injury. Another important indicator is whether, if we have such an injury which occurs, what is the probability of the environment being polluted by these reactors? Well, the probability for this is even lower, and I think this is the most important question. The size of the blocks, someone said that nuclear power plants are inflexible. This is true. Nuclear power plants were constructed as basic power plants. This was the specification and this was the way they were designed. However, in France, where 78% of electricity is produced in nuclear power plants, of course, these blocks are regulatable. And the blocks that we will buy and we will bring here will have capacity flexibility of 50 to 100%. Whether or not they can be joined into the grid, well, it's a good question, and we have done the analysis, and because the POX blocks are N-2 blocks, and we want to maintain this, we need to develop the grid, and we need to develop the transmission lines. But of course, the capacity of the POX power plant can be extended as expected. This is a very important issue that we have to take into consideration. We have a 60-year life cycle span. Everyone says that blocks or the construction of nuclear energy blocks are very expensive. Of course, this is true. This has a huge sunken cost. However, if we look at the proportionate price and cost, and we look at the amortization rate for 60 years, then of course we can see that the electricity price of nuclear energy is relatively low. This should be a pressurized water reactor, and the analysis has shown that this is the least costly solution. As the energy strategy has set as its goal, maybe in the 30s the power plant will be relocated. I don't know, Mr. President, whether or not I have more time. The time is over, but you can conclude. I have barely started, so I would like to briefly show this Google picture where we would like to locate block numbers 5 and 6 north of POX. What kind of reactors do we plan to introduce? An EPR, French type block, and a VVER, pressurized water reactor. Hungary knows the robust Russian technology, so this can be easily introduced. There's a Korean type, APR 1400, developed by the Koreans, developed from a combustion engineering unit, and they can be exported. The Arab Emirates have, for example, imported this type. ATMEA is a French-Japanese unit. This has never been used yet, although Jordania and Argentine has contemplated using it. Argentina has contemplated using it. And AP1000 is one of the most reliable passive systems. The security features show that if the same incident would occur in these blocks, like what happened in Fukushima, that there's no cooling water input, these blocks could avoid the accident for a longer time. The American block can, without any interference, operate for 78 hours, and if manual part is open, then this can be extended to 1 week of operation without interference. So this presentation can be downloaded later, so I would like to conclude here. Just one more thing that I would like to point out. An American person told me if someone is preparing for a presentation, we should always include something that would relieve the pressure in the audience. So let me talk about one of these stories. An engineer is a good person, right? Once an engineer died and the engineer got to hell by mistake. And God found out that a mistake has happened and went down to hell. And said that because of an administrative mistake, this engineer got into hell and should go to heaven. And Lucifer said, I believe you, but this engineer is working really hard here and has already got down to the heating system and working on the installations and renovating them, and he has a lot of work to do here, and we are very satisfied with him. I don't want to let him go. And then a dispute started whether or not to let him go. And then God said, good, if we cannot agree, then I will take you to court and I will hire a lawyer. And then Lucifer said, if you find a lawyer, thank you very much.